pleased to introduce Dr. Greg Zhang. He is a geologist with 14 years experience in resource estimation, exploration, academic research across multiple commodities. He has worked over 70 projects, including resource estimation and audit reviewing due diligence for gold, copper, nickel, iron ore, silver, cobalt, mineral sands, and PGE across most continents. He develops and presents Snowden Optiro's professional development courses in both English and Mandarin. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Bruno. Thanks. It's an honor to be here, present this topic in front of all the important ones who sit until this point of time. Thanks. So this is my title of the presentations, and so a little bit about myself. And okay, so let's start with acknowledgement. So thanks for all the project managers who get me involved in all sorts of the interesting and challenging projects. And for this presentation, all the software I've been using includes Datamine Studio RM, Supervisor, and occasionally iCitus New. So glance of a little bit of context of this study. So this study is based on 60 projects, and including all the commodity types, mineralization types, and all over the world. So I've done those projects from both the estimator and the independent reviewer perspectives. So I think that is a very representative sample to talk about this topic. And for some of the the red dots, each of them represent more than one project, and I've slightly offset the locations on purpose, so just in case you find, oh, that's the project we're talking about. So please don't do that. And mining assets is the core assets of most of the mining industry, mining companies, and to get give the accurate estimation of those mineral assets is very important. And for our mining industry, there's some cyclic feature. We get upturns, we get a lot of people get into the industry, but when it comes to the downturns, a lot of people with the right skills and experiences, they probably left this industry and never get back. So a lot of lessons will need to be relearned, and some skills need to be relearned as well. And so that's why it is, I think there's a point to give a summarize what we have at this point in time, and so as a reference point, and then we can get back in maybe 5-10 years later and do the comparison. So because of the time limit, I won't elaborate under each of the topic. Today I will just focus on those 5 highlighted points, aspects, and hopefully next presentation or even during the 2025 MRE conference, I can get to talk about all the other aspects. So our industry standards keep evolving, as we know, and for example, the coming JORC standard, that's a very good example, and so are other things. For example, the estimation methods, it changes from the traditional ones, coming to the more modern technique. Early before we probably talk about the point estimate, the nearest neighbor, the polygonal, but then we come to more advanced inverse distance or ordinary kriging, or even some nonlinear estimation methods. And in the resource estimation, I mean, the geology and great uncertainty of variability, which is in the genetics of this industry. But also we get other issues on top of that. The data quality, which is always the foundation of all the rest of the workflow. So all those things contributing to the challenges of this resource estimation. And the first aspect is about domaining. So when I talk about domaining, I'm talking about two parts. One is geology or mineralization, and the other is estimation domaining. So with this implicit modeling nowadays is becoming the trend, the majority, and we also see some quite funny things about this implicit modeling. Yes, it does can largely improve the proficiency, and it can make the update of your wireframes in a very short period of time. But also we've seen quite some bubble wireframes where it doesn't give you either the geology or the grade continuity. So, but we can see the good side of this technique is, in the future, with those scripting or macros, it can potentially streamline the entire workflow. So that's a good thing, which is that you can't really do that with the explicit modeling early before. So this importance of the geology understanding is just can't be overstated. That forms the foundation of the resource estimation, and but the key thing, the most important thing, is to match your mineralization type, match your wireframes with your mineralization type. And if we are talking about the narrow vein gold deposit, building up a very bulk wireframes and do some inverse distance or ordinary kriging directly inside that will not help you. That's not the best practice. And when we talks about the estimation domain here, we see this kind of the problem all the time. So I've created some dummy project or dummy data to prove 1 or 2 points in the following slide. So there are overall there are 3 scenarios, but let me walk through this with you. On the top left table, we have two domains. One is relatively the low-grade domain on the left, and on the right-hand side, that's a high-grade domain. And for each of the domain, you have one single outlier put in there. And below that, I used the weighted average as the estimation value, just to show you how would this single outlier will affect the domain average. And for the low-grade scenario, one single outlier gonna increase average by over 100%, and in the other scenario, in the high-grade scenario, where this low-grade sample does not have that much influence. When we move on to the second scenario, which is on the bottom left, I've changed this relative weight for this outlier. For the for the low-grade domain, we could take that as a high-yield constraint. And by applying this high-yield constraint, we can see the influence of this single outlier on the domain average is largely reduced and controlled. So that, on one hand, that proves the point of this high-yield function can be really useful in some scenario. And on the high-grade scenario, which on the right-hand side, you can see this. If we apply this high-yield on this low-grade outlier, it can also help to restrict the influence. But in the reality, it's not a lot of us to do this for the low-grade samples. And on this third scenario, which on the top right, you can see when I add one more outlier for both the low-grade and the high-grade scenario, even with the high-yield constraint for the high-grade for the low-grade domaining, you can see there's still 27% influence on the average. So that means once you put you don't need a lot, just a few high-grade samples, 10, 20%, it can largely affect your domain average and make your estimation, neither representative of your low-grade samples and neither for your high-grade samples. So that's a key takeaway. And for the right-hand side, the high-grade domain with a low-grade outliers, which we always call that internal waste. So once that internal waste ratio reaches a certain threshold, you start to see it will largely influence your average. And in the practical work, when we see the projects with 20, 30, even as high as 50% of the internal waste ratio, we start to make it a really high risk, because this domain there's always tend to be a very serious domaining risk there. Okay, so then we move on to the EDA. So that's our resource geo's day-to-day work, and within that, we always need to look at our data from different perspectives and using different tools, and then talk about the variography, to see what's great continuity in the 3D space. And then we talk about the declustering techniques and capping analysis. None of those I'm going to talk in details. It's just put there for the reference point. But there's always challenges in this part whether we should use all of our samples or not, specifically for the underground phase samples and open pit blast holes, whether we should treat that as other diamond or RC holes or not. You always need to do some tests and to see how the data set compare to each other. Other than that, the accurate rotation in some geostatistical software, that's a point where it might make some of the software packages nervous, because we noticed when we do the review, third-party review or audit projects, we can see some softwares can't really deal with that, and especially when it's flawed, users are usually be the last ones who realize there's a flaw. So the point is to always have a check and look at the rotation if that makes sense to you. And then the last, always document your data analysis process, whether it's data selection, any modification, just for your own reference purpose, but also for the third-party reviewer to make everyone's life easier. And here are some useful tools I use very often. So left-hand side, it's log scale histograms, and the right-hand side, the log probability plot. So when I have a data set, start to look at it, I always start from here and see if I can identify any mixed populations, and whether for domain purpose or for any other reasons. But I always started from here and to pick up some points, so draw my attention to in the later on validation. So the next aspect is resource estimation methods. So there has been evolving, and from the paper-based method to ordinary kriging, and but I think the most important thing we resource geologists should keep in mind is the volume variance relationship. So whatever the method we use, we need to honor this relationship, and as geologists, we always have a very good intuition about that. And whether it's simple ordinary kriging or more complicated nonlinear estimation methods, the fundamental is this relationship, and if you get this relationship right, you can't be too wrong. And with the high-power computers and nowadays available for everyone, it makes the estimation really easy. As of the time-wise, early before it might take a couple days to run one estimation. Now it probably only take a couple minutes. So it saves us a lot of time and effort, and so we can do the sensitivity tests. And especially for the complicated deposits and with multi-elements, we now have more time and effort, can test few methods and see how our data set responds to the different methods. And for the especially for the multi-element deposits, whenever I see a very good correlation between different elements, it is always important to maintain that correlation before and after the estimation. And how to achieve that is always a challenge. So that definitely deserves some time and effort in there. And the last point, for the large mining houses, especially for some, for example, porphyry copper deposit, where you, even at the early stage, people need to get involved in all the mineralogy or different deleterious elements just for the geometallurgy purpose. You want to build in those factors as early as possible, and for your estimation, for your models. So all of that will need some skills or understanding of this geostatistics and about the mining software packages, and the more efficient you can to streamline the workflow, the more time and effort you have to look at other important things about geology. And then validation. From my personal opinion, I think this is really important. I mean, for one project to do the resource estimation, I usually spend half of time to do the EDA, wireframing and estimation, but for the other half of time to do the sensitivity checks and also the validation. So later on, I'm going to show you some trick to, for example, use a global change of support technique, discrete Gaussian method to do the validation. But in reality is we have the time and effort to do the validation, and we have all sorts of the validation tools used, and we can use the smart ones, for example, this DG method, or we can just cut sections to do the visual validation. And this visual validation might sound simple, but I don't think it can be replaced by any other high-tech method, because for so many times when I cut the sections to look at the deposit overlaid with the drill hole data, you just can get some surprise. You will see this, see that, and then you get back to optimize your parameters and potentially your estimation method. And then the last, documentation. Always want to document everything, and in your technical report or just notes, so for other people and for yourself. So this is one example where I like this trick very much. So this is a copper gold deposit where what I've done is color the drill holes by the copper grade and scale the sample size by the gold grade. So by rotating the drill holes in 3D space, you can easily see the trend that couple things. The first is copper and gold. They have pretty good correlation in 3D space. And the other thing is those deposits initially was treated as one deposit, but then, when you look at those things in 3D, you can realize there might be two gaps, and you can potentially cut this into 3 bits. And that's how I get this idea. I learned this tool from our mining engineer colleagues, and where this is used in the pit optimization. It's called a sequencing tool, where you could select a grade field and then decide the intervals, and it will show the grade by different grade intervals. So by doing that, color the drill holes, select the copper grade, and display by as 0.1% as the interval. You can readily see that as the grade increase, these two gaps I mentioned earlier before, it gets more and more obvious. So here's another 2 things I like in Datamine Studio, where you could use those 2 commands to generate those plots very efficiently, and then potentially you can macro that, script that process, and especially when you are doing this for the multi-elements deposit for multiple domains, streamline is really important. So here's an example for the discrete Gaussian method, where we use that. I use that very often. So rather than picking up some places where it can be improved in our client's model, I would like to give some practical assessment about, for example, how much is the risk, how high the risk is, and how much over smooth is, and so we can decide from there if it's material or not. So this is I think it's very useful tool. So when you overlay your point tonnage grade curve with various different TJ curves at different block size, and then compare with the actual tonnage grade curve from your model, you can see what's how much smooth you have been put into your model by using your parameters and methods, and of course your domaining. So in this case, it's initially we thought the block size too small compared to your drill hole spacing, but then after this test, what we can tell is yes, it's not perfect, but it's probably not that material. And the last aspect is reporting. So when we talk about reporting, we talk about two parts. One is resource reporting, and the other is technical report writing. So it might sound very simple to you, but 2 out of these 60 projects, we find this error during the reporting stage, where for each of the project, this is over $500 million dirt is over reported. So that's pretty scary, especially for the mid or junior, relatively small scale projects, and that could just kill the whole project. And for the large mining company, where you get multiple disciplines need to cooperate very often, especially from the geology to the engineer team, during that transfer or handover, quite some information can get lost. So it is very good to have this handover memo. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be just 1 or 2 pages with the block model name, the size, the records, field names, and whatever the constraints you applied to get your resource reporting. So we've been saying very, very good handover memo, which we adapted to our daily workflow, but also we've seen very bad practice where we have to spend a couple weeks to just reproduce what they claimed in their public release. And when we talk about technical report writing, so we don't have to be Shakespeare, but there's a bare minimum information we need to input in this report. So I've been working on the projects where there's only 2 A4 pages with a couple tables, and that's all we have. So we have to make a lot of investigation research to trace the geology and to guess back what the parameters have been using. And for the good example, I've seen over 300 pages just documenting one single deposit. So this is a huge difference in the industry, and hopefully the new code is gonna bring us to some better middle ground and guide us to a better standard. So emerging trend. So last year, during this 2023 MRE conference, 12 out of 22 papers discussed the nonlinear estimation methods under the context of risk analysis, resource classification, drill hole spacing study, and validation. So apparently it's coming and it's getting more and more used. Although the theories are already there back 20, even 30, 40 years before, but now it only becomes more available to most of us with better computers. But to me, the reason why it's not as widely used as it's supposed to be is, most of the time we do these projects under a time limitation. We don't have enormous time and resources to do all sorts of the fancy stuff. We have to select the best method within a very limited time to get the job done. So I've seen some people get very emotional, carried away for certain methods, estimation methods, for example, MIK, and people have a very negative feeling about it. But to me, I don't think it's really necessary. It's just a method. You only when you have the appropriate knowledge about certain methods, then you can decide to use it or not. And then artificial intelligence and machine learning, those are two hot topics where nowadays every conference is going to mention that to a certain level. I don't think we're going to get a lot of discussion today, but certainly one of the things coming, and thanks to Bruno, who showed me very, very good examples already used in the mining stages, especially the digital twins. So I think for us resource geologists, we need to equip our skill and knowledge with those trends, before it's too late. So the concluding thoughts, it's very important to make us updated with knowledge and skills, and as for us as a third-party reviewer, it's very easy to find the fault, but always give the practical assessment is the most important thing, and that requires professional experiences. And from the estimator perspective, the non-linear estimation methods, the digital twin stochastic models, so those are I think it's very important for us to learn right now rather than too late. And for those great geology and great risks, embedded into the estimation. So we need to give a probably better quantified assessment, as part of the best practice in the future. And the overall trend is the estimation going to be towards becoming more and more comprehensive and sophisticated. And I guess with the new trends and the new industry standards, the new common mistakes will evolve as well. So it's also very important for us to stay updated. So hopefully this study can be used as a checklist. So in 5-10 years later, when we get back and we do the similar comparison, we can see how the industry has evolved during this period of time. And that's the end of the presentation, and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. I'm Pam from Consulting too. That was great. I don't have any question, I just have a suggestion. You mentioned that we have to stay with the standard, but we need to keep in mind that the standard is the minimum requirement. We should be above the standard, not just stay with the standard.
Exactly. Such an old saying. I like that very much. So if I know where I'm going to die, I'm going to stay away from that place for the rest of my life. So as long as we know the common mistakes, we stay away from that. So at least we're not the worst examples. And then we can try to achieve the best practice.